Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the testimony series tonight. This evening we're here with Taylor Greiving, and we are excited to hear what God has done in her life. So, Taylor, we'll let you get started tonight.
Okay. Well, I just thank you guys for letting me have the opportunity to come out here, and I really just hope and pray that it actually helps somebody that's gone through a lot of the same things that I have, or just some of the things that I have. Really, I just wanted to share kind of at the beginning of knowing God. I did know God as a child. As I was little, probably my first memories of going to church was with my Mimi, and she took me to VBS every summer, and we did go to church not every Sunday, but most Sundays up until I was about in middle school. And then I got into what we had. It was YoFam, which was the youth family with the Presbyterian Church in Derby, and I really loved that. So I didn't really start getting away from God so much until I was about 15, going into high school, figuring out who I was, and I ended up doing cheerleading, and I think I was a junior in high school at that time, and met my now ex-husband, and one night after a football game, decided to have premarital sex, got pregnant with my son, and from there, things really changed a lot for me. My parents weren't very happy that I was pregnant, so therefore they didn't like my boyfriend at the time. So I had my son. He was born probably 5 days before my senior year would have started, and so I didn't go to school then. I just did it from home, and then I had to go back in November, and I went to high school for about a month, and then graduated midterm. As soon as I turned 18, my parents wouldn't let me live with my boyfriend, so as long as I was living under their roof, so I moved out and moved in with my boyfriend's parents, and that's kind of really where I definitely got away from God. My boyfriend was pretty strong in believing that there was nothing after this life. And, it was a manipulation game to basically calling the Christians hypocrites, and just, you see what their Bible says, and they don't act that way. And it just kind of made a lot of sense to me at the time. So, I always thought that there probably was. I wasn't really sure, but as time went on for years and years, I just got further away to the point that I did believe that you died and you went in the ground and that was it. And some people needed a bedtime story to get through every day. So I did get married, I think, when I was 19 years old to the father of my son. And then I had a daughter when I was 21. And I just, tried to do the right thing and what I thought was the right thing as far as raising them. But my ex-husband was very abusive, not as much physical. When it was physical, it was really physical and really bad, and couldn't leave my house for a couple of weeks, but mostly just emotional and verbal to the point of just controlling me and separating me from my family, friends. I mean, I literally was scared if I didn't message him after 5 minutes, because I didn't know what was going to come after that.
Right.
He ended up getting into drugs really bad, which I didn't know about. I just thought he just didn't want to work, and so.
Now, at this point, were you guys on your own, or were you still with his parents?
Yeah, after I moved out a couple of years. After we lived with his parents, I moved out, and we got our own place. And I worked for Walmart's corporate office, the one that was in the Atwoods building.
Okay.
So I worked there for 6 or 7 years, and then when it all came out that he had been doing drugs and found out, I wanted him to not do them anymore, and he said that we would, but he couldn't do it here because he knew too many people. So I had the opportunity to move to Arkansas, and at that point, my parents, nobody wanted me to move away, because they knew things weren't right, but I never would talk to them about what was going on. They just didn't know why. I didn't ever want to do anything with family functions or didn't want to be around them. I just didn't tell them what was going on. So I started applying for transfers in Arkansas. At that point, I was 24. So I actually did get a job offer there making substantially more than what I was making here. So it made sense to me, but nobody wanted me to go. So I was pretty much giving up any type of family tie, anything that I would have had support-wise to go to Arkansas. And it worked out okay for the first 3 or 4 months. And then he got a job at a liquor store that was right next to our house. And he started drinking all the time. And so I basically replaced prescription pills with drinking. And so I was salaried there at Walmart, so I would have to work sometimes till 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And I would get home, and he wouldn't have known where my kids were, what they were at the neighbor's house somewhere, but he didn't know whose neighbor's house. And I just got to a point where I was just fed up with him, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I've changed my entire life for you, and I don't want to be with you anymore.
How old were you guys at this stage? How long have you been together?
Well, we had been together since I was 16, so that would be 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
At this point.
And how old are your children?
My children at the time would have been, my daughter was in kindergarten and my son was in 2nd grade.
Okay.
I don't know the exact ages
okay.
at that
Close
point.
enough. I was trying to get a feel for, your life at the time.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And I had gotten very accustomed to having kind of like a double life. Nobody knew that things were going wrong at home. I didn't talk to people at work about what was going on. Even my kids, didn't understand, and I didn't ever want them to see us fighting. We did fight till my son was about 2, and the physical altercations and stuff, but then when he started crying and you could tell that it was upsetting to him, we both made the decision to not fight in front of them. Uh-huh. So they didn't know that anything was really wrong. Mm-hmm. But at that point, when I had the conversation with him and told him I didn't want to be together anymore, he just looked at me straight face and said, "You're not leaving. I mean, we can leave together. We can leave this earth together, but you're not going anywhere." And so it kind of got bad for a while. He would just trap me in our closet at the house, tell me I wasn't going to be able to do anything. So I just kind of shut off mentally and emotionally, everything all together, and decided that I had to do what I had to do to survive. And I did call my parents and told them, kind of explained what was going on. And they actually helped me get a protection from abuse order in place, and they helped get him, they orchestrated it to where we knew that his parents were coming down to visit the kids that one weekend. We didn't tell his parents because we didn't want them to say anything to him about it, and just orchestrated to where he got served when I left the house, when I was gone with the kids, and I did not have to see him. The police escorted him out. My parents helped load his stuff up with his parents and told him he had to go back to Kansas. And that was about 15 days before Christmas of 2015. So, I don't know. And I had been so strong in thinking that I could do it and thinking that I could do it. And then after he was gone, I just mentally I had been so manipulated for so long. I started feeling bad. I had just, I'd been completely fake, didn't lead on that anything was wrong, made it seem like everything was fine. I mean, the day that I left him, I told him I loved him and gave him a hug and a kiss before I left the house. So I just felt like I didn't know who I was. I was pretty lost. And so it didn't take long for him to start calling me, basically telling me that he knew that I was going to leave. He knew that I was going to do this the whole time, but that I was a terrible person and that I'm just fake, and that he was going to make sure everybody knew just how fake I was, especially my kids, that I could have just waited till after Christmas. So, I mean, it was already I thought I got away, but he just slowly started to put his claws back in again. But I did stay in Arkansas, and then during the summer... He was back here? He was here in Kansas, and but during the summer, at that point, my parents were still wanting me to come back to Kansas because they're like, you can't raise your kids on your own in Arkansas by yourself. I'm like, yes, I can. I want to do that. But in the summertime, they went back to Kansas, and they stayed there for the summer between his parents and my parents. And he actually got a job working at Lowe's for a while. And my kids just didn't want to come back to Arkansas for the next school year. So my parents were like, can they just stay here? And I was like, okay, and I'll try to transition back to Kansas, but I couldn't just come back. I mean, I had to work at it. Well, at that point, I would just come back every weekend and see them because it's about a 5-hour drive. And I did that for that school year. And then my grandma, Carla, which is my mom's mom, got really sick. She had actually just got out of a really abusive relationship with her ex-husband after 13 years. And she got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. So during that time, it worked out nicely because I could work remotely for the most part. And so it kind of helped my mom and my sisters have a little bit of a break because we pretty much had to give her around-the-clock care. And so it was nice for somebody to be able to be with her because she would just walk and be gone and nobody would know where she was at if she got left at home alone. So I was living back at my parents' house or at my grandma's house between the two with my kids. And my ex, the whole time, I wanted him to just be involved with the kids, but he didn't, really want to have a part in it. And part of that, he had admitted to me that he had started using meth. And so he said that he wanted to get help. He didn't want to do that anymore. So he just needed help. But he had a fiance by this point and was living with his fiance. But he wouldn't come and see the kids, wouldn't do stuff with them. They'd be asking to do stuff with them. And so he's like, well, I'm not coming to your parents' house because I hate your parents. I'm not going to be around them. If you want for me to see the kids, then I need to have a place that I can go and see them. I'm not going to go stay at a park. That's, just different ways of finding ways to get me away and isolate me again from my parents. So, fast forward in May of 2017, my grandma did pass away from Alzheimer's. And I just didn't do very well with that because I had been so disconnected from my family, not involved with family functions, not doing anything. So I got really, really close to my grandma. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard because I actually had these feelings for somebody outside of my ex and my kids and so losing her was just really hard. So pretty much a couple weeks after she passed away, I got a house and I moved out so that I could be with my kids. And I didn't know how to deal with everybody else's emotions to it too, because everybody else was sad and I just didn't know. I don't know. I was just not a very good place mentally. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping, Mm-hmm. I probably weighed 100 pounds just because I was just so stressed all the time. But anyway, so when I got the house, my ex did start coming around and was being around the kids. I didn't really know. I mean, I don't know much about meth, so I didn't really know that he was still doing it at that time. Because I guess you can act pretty much normal for the most part. It's just makes you more awake and alert. But after extended use for long periods of time, it can cause problems. So in September of 2017, my ex had came over to the house and said that he thought that there was a gas leak in our house. So he wanted me to take my kids over to his parents' house. And I was like, okay, we can do that. And I got there to his parents' house and they said, well, what, have you tried to call the gas company? I'm like, no, I don't know how to get a hold of the gas company. I couldn't find a phone number for them online. She's like, oh, you can just call 911. So she called 911 for me. And she's like, well, somebody needs to be at the house. And my ex wasn't at home or wasn't there. He just dropped us off. I don't know where he went, but he just wasn't there. So I called him. I said, hey, somebody needs to be at the house to let them in. He's like, Taylor, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you think, but you need to be going downstairs and you need to be checking on the kids and watching them. He's like, I'll be there in a minute. He said, because they're lying to you. I'm like, okay. So I went downstairs and went and watched my kids and was just checking their heart rates, breathing, making sure they were doing okay. And then a few minutes later, he showed up and was talking to his parents. And then his parents came downstairs with him. And it wasn't very long. He's standing in the doorway of his parents' room. And then his dad, I don't know what his dad did, but my ex pulled out a gun on his parents and said, if you point some choice words gun at my daughter again, I'm going to blow your head off. And my kids instantly woke up, were freaked out. I'm freaked out. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's just like, you need to take the kids upstairs right now. So I just took them upstairs, and my kids were traumatized. They were freaking out. They were like, is he going to kill Papa? Is he going to kill Papa? I'm like, no, he's not going to kill Papa. Everything's going to be fine. I'm just like, I don't know what to do. But long story short, he gets upstairs, tells us we're leaving, and they're coming with us. And I'm like, we don't know. Let's just leave. Let's just be done with this. Let's go. But he insisted on getting into a car and having his parents drive, and basically held his parents at gunpoint and took us all the way to Salina till we got to a hotel, and he acted like everything was normal. His parents called the police. They came and arrested him. And it was just, it was a really traumatic, really scary time, because, anything that had gone on between us had really just been between us. Just a couple weeks prior to that, he was upset, had a gun to my head, told me he was going to kill me. And at that point, honestly, I just wanted him to. I just wanted to be done. And that to me is the most scary part, knowing what I know now, because I really just wanted to die, because I really had this strong faith that there was nothing in this life after this, and it would end the suffering. But basically, the police wanted me to give a statement about what happened, and it was a very small police station, and I could hear my ex-husband talking. I could hear his parents talking, and I didn't know why he had acted that way, but I didn't want to have him kill me for saying something about what happened. So I just told him I didn't want to write a statement. They had taken my kids out of the room. I just wanted them to bring my kids back in. Probably stayed in there for another 3 or 4 hours, and then I got frustrated with them because they just told me, they're like, you're not in trouble. We just want you to write a statement about what happened. And I said, I know that I'm not in trouble. I watched enough Law and Order with my grandma to know that I don't have to do anything. And so unless I'm in trouble, I want to leave, and I want my kids, and I want to go. And the detective obviously was not very happy with my response. So he said, okay, we'll do that, and got up and walked out of the room. And I was just like, he's going to do what? So, long story short, they ended up charging me basically with aiding and abetting. My ex had got hit with kidnapping, robbery, assault, and I had all of those charges as well. And they transported us from Salina back to Derby, booked us through Derby Police Department, and then took us to Sedgwick County Jail.
Wow.
And I sat there for 7 months. But in that's really where, for me, the testimony really starts for me, because I was very alone at that point. I wasn't talking to my parents, wasn't talking to anybody. I didn't know who to talk to, and I'm just sitting in jail. I can't talk to my kids. They told me I couldn't talk to anybody, that I just, basically just had to sit there. And so at one point, a lady from the pod that I was in jail asked me if I wanted to come to Bible study, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to come to Bible study. Like, I'm not going to do that. But as I sat there for a couple weeks, I'm like, and I realized that nobody was coming to get me out of jail. And this was a real thing. And I'm not leaving. I'm like, well, maybe I can fake it enough to where my parents or somebody will feel sorry for me and get me out of here, because I just don't want to be in here anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I started going to the Bible studies, because I didn't know enough. If I lost so much of the knowledge from what I learned as a kid, that I have to make it believable, So I started going to the Bible studies, and like instantly, it'd be like the stuff that I was thinking about to the day, they would be talking about at Bible study. They'd be talking about it in Scripture, and I just was like, this is really weird. Yeah. Like, I just thought, and then I just remember one time after the Bible study, I went up into my cell, and I just heard this voice, and it was like, I knew it was God, but I didn't know it was God. It was just like, you're not going to be able to do it this time. I'm like, what? And he's just like, you're not going to be able to fake your way through this again. If you do not heed what I'm saying, you will be dead before the end of this year. And even when I was in jail, I felt completely lost. I was thinking, if I can't get out of here, then I'm just going to end it. I don't want to keep living. I don't want to keep doing this. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And so, at that point, I just started crying. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't know if you're real. I don't know if I'm just losing my mind. I don't know if I'm crazy. I'm like, but you're going to have to prove this to me, because I just know too much to think this is actually real. I don't believe in you. I don't believe that this is real. You're going to have to really show me. And he did. I mean, he answered me. I mean, I told him I would put in the effort to learn, and I did. I had my grandma order me every type of Bible, devotional, my family was very supportive of me in that. They sent me all kinds of things. My grandma had friends that would just randomly send me mail, because that was just like, when you're in there alone, you don't have that outside connection to anybody. It was just really important to have feel like there was somebody on the outside that was there for you. And I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. It probably was only a couple of months after being in there that I did just truly give it over. And I was just a baby at it. So I didn't know. I mean, knowing what I know now, I knew that I heard a lot of false things while I was in there, as well. But it was just trying to navigate through that and knowing what was real. And I mean, it was a very, very special time for me in my walk, because I had so much alone time that I heard from him regularly. I mean, we'd have conversations, and I tried to write it all down as much as I could of everything that was going on. And I just then started talking to my family about it, and occasionally that was like, I felt like one day I'd be like, it's really important that we do communion together, and so they would do the communion out there and we would do it. And I was just like, I want my kids to be going to church. They'd start taking them to church. I mean, I don't know. It was just, they were just really supportive. And then, so I had sat there for so long because they kept postponing my thing. And I mean, but I was still at peace. I was like, once I had God and I knew that God was with me the entire time, I was at peace with being there. Of course, I would still cry, because I was going on 7 months without being able to talk to my kids at all. And my parents couldn't say anything about what was going on. They didn't know what was going on because they kept delaying my court dates. So in April, I actually did have a court date, and that's when they released all of the basically preliminary evidence of what happened in there. And then they decide whether they're going to take you to trial or not. And at that point, my judge did bind me over to go to trial, just said there was enough that I needed to go into trial and fight for my innocence. But my attorney at the time also asked for them to reduce my bond, because my bond was set at $50,000. And he, even after hearing everything and going through that, he reduced my bond to $25,000. And my parents and my grandparents bonded me out within a week. And that part was just really cool to me too, because my bondsman is Raz, and he was there when I got out. And I was just like, when they tell you you're rolled to go, you're sitting in jail for so long, it's just like everything is so, like, you're walking to a door where you can actually see outside. I hadn't been outside other than when they transferred me to a different jail, and they don't actually let you go outside. They just, in this huge hangar where they put you in a car and handcuff you into it, it's not like, and so I knew I could see the door, and then there's just this big, huge guy with tattoos, and he's like explaining to me that he's my bondsman, and he's just talking, and I can't even hear him because, like, I can hear the wind and the trees and, like, the birds, and, like, I was just, like, so, like, it was just so amazing, and I just had such a different appreciation for what the world was, because I knew who created it. And so he said, he's like, you just got to do the right thing. He's like, I know you have a good heart. I know you can do this, but you need to stay connected. He's like, you can always come to my church. I go to the Well. And I'm like, okay, I'll come, and so, even when my dad drove me home, they went to South Rock at the time. So he had taken me there so I could just pray, because I was just like an emotional mess. Like, I was just so happy to be out, even knowing that I still couldn't talk to my kids, because at that point they'd still told me I still couldn't have contact with them. But I was just so thankful. And then that.
So your bail bondsman.
Yeah.
Gave you an invite to church.
Yeah.
Before you left the jail.
Yeah.
Your faith has started in the jail.
Yeah.
You've turned your heart to the Lord. God's pursued you there. God's starting to speak to you there. And before you ever step foot out of it, God brings you right in the path of somebody to invite you to church. How awesome is that?
Yeah.
Praise
And
God.
I mean, and that was one of the prayers that I had prayed. I mean, that's what I told him. I was like, I prayed to be able to have a church that I could go to, that I wanted to go to, and that I would be able to be involved with. So, I mean, it was just like already answered. Because I know I still knew that I had a lot to prove and that people had doubt and stuff like that. So I don't know if Raz really believed that I would actually go to the church or not, but I was just so ecstatic that he had said it. I mean, so I had never heard of the well or anything like that before that. So
We're glad you did.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
It was incredible.
Yeah. So
Incredible. God just
moved.
He did. Yeah.
And he continues to, because the well is an amazing church, and I feel, at home there, I love all of the people there. I mean, that was the hardest part for me, is I went to other churches, not naming any of them, but, that's part of why I got away from it in the first place, because the genuineness wasn't there. It was more like, sometimes when we live in Derby, it's more of like your appearance on the outside and not so much about what's going on the inside. And everybody I come in contact to here with the well, and are very genuine. They want to help you. They want to be there for you. I know that I have at least 50 people at any given time that I could reach out to, and they're going to be there and help me and support me through that.
Do you remember the first service that you came? Not necessarily who was preaching or any of that, but just, do you remember coming? What month and year that would have been?
Yeah, it would have been, I got out on April 24th, and I came to church on like the April 26th or April 28th. And I still have all of my notes from all of those.
And what year? Has it been 2?
Yeah, it would have been 2018.
Okay.
So yes, I would like to say that I remember the exact sermon. It wasn't so much the exact sermon that had me hooked on the church. It was just that you were preaching that Sunday. I do know that. And I just knew that, like, what you were saying made sense. Like, it had made the most sense, because I had attended the jail, any service I could go to in jail that they offered. But there is a lot of false preaching that's going on in that church. And so some of it just didn't really make sense. I had got in contact with a guy that named Eddie Gerlach that did jail ministry and would come up there. And so I liked that better because it was more one-on-one. He's reading directly from the Bible. I'm not just hearing, I don't know the name for it. It's like in the Copeland Ministries. What is that type of prosperity gospel?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's more preaching like that. Like just, and I'm not saying that you can't, pray and that God's not going to answer your prayers, but I don't think that you can just believe that you're going to have a bunch of money and that God's just going to give you a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of stuff like that was going on.
And there's a whole lot more important things to be preaching at a jail.
Yeah.
Than prosperity gospel. But you're absolutely right. I did jail ministry myself on and off for 20 years. And thank God for the people that do it. But sometimes you got to really find the meat on the bones in what you're hearing there. But God has a way of using it all. He did use it anyways, despite all that, to lead you to himself. So we've known you for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. We've watched this amazing, difficult journey. Mm-hmm. You get out, you're at the church, but you don't know what's going to happen. You get out because you're out on bond, not because you've been exonerated or found not guilty. Mm-hmm. And you're actually looking at prison time. You're looking at real solid prison time for
10 years.
Supposedly kidnapping your own children and participating in that chaos. Mm-hmm. And it is a waiting game. Mm-hmm. Talk about testing your faith and testing God. Are you really on my side or not? Walk us a little bit through how your faith grew, how God used that time to draw you close to Him, and some of the battles of waiting and waiting and waiting for this court case.
Yeah. For me, I knew that it wasn't just, I knew when I was getting out on bond that it, in a way, I felt like God was testing my faith too, in a way, just, making sure that I was really going to stick with it. and for me, I needed that accountability, to not just get out instantly and then just go back to the way that I was living before. It was really important to me that my kids would be able to hear the same messages that I'm hearing. And at this point, my kids know that I'm out of jail, but they've not seen me. They don't get to see me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to set up for another appeal to be able to have the opportunity to see them. And then that was pretty amazing in itself, too, because what they approved for me to see, because I had explained to my judge that I wanted them to be able to come to church with me, and that's exactly what they approved for me to do. So that was the very first thing that they were allowed to do with me, was go to church, and they could see me in a, what's the word, like a place that was not like somebody's house, setting. Like a public place, as long as it was supervised. So, seeing that's just kind of what really helped my faith, because God knew. I don't know how many times I cried and cried and cried, because I've never been apart from my kids. That was so hard. But at the same time, God knew I wouldn't have been able to get through that time, because if anything, God designed me to be a mother. They have my heart always, so I know that I wouldn't have been able to make it through without them if I didn't have God, if I didn't have Him there with me through that entire process. And He did. I knew that if I was faithful to Him, that He's going to be faithful to me. And I still believe that if no matter what we go through. I know there was a lot of people that I've talked to and people that aren't necessarily believing, they're just like, how can you be okay with that God allowed those things to happen? It's not God that allowed those things to happen. It was my own choices that got me to that point. God was there and no matter how bad things had gotten, that He still pursued me, that He still wanted me. And that to me was like the most amazing thing, because that was always a problem that I've always had, is having self-worth. I'd allowed people to beat me down and to think that I'm only worth as much as the person tells me I am. And God thinks that we're, infinitely worth everything. Yes. And,
very high value.
I just want, to instill that for my kids and my family. And I wish that, I want everybody to be able to have the experience and the relationship that I was able to build with Him. And I just think that is so important, because we live in a very, very fallen time. It's hard if you're not in your Bible, if you're not praying, if you're not doing those things, it is very easily to get deceived. The second person that wants your soul more than anybody is the devil. And he will use any tactic and anything. I think some people get annoyed with how much I say that I'm just like, no. And they're like, well, I think I'm crazy. And I don't care. I don't care if they think I'm crazy, because it can get into you in any way, shape, or form. You always have to be on guard. That's why they tell you to wear the full armor of God. So,
Amen.
Yeah.
Taylor, it's been an honor to watch you over the last couple of years.
I was able to get baptized, and I was so excited about that.
Yeah, I was excited for you. We are cheerleaders on your team, and you've got a whole bunch of people around you that are for you, and you are inspiring us. I've seen people in similar situations just bad, that either go the other way or they turn towards God. And you were there. You're at a turning point. Like, there's no matter what, I can't stay here, right? And so it's either go the wrong direction or go the right direction. I've seen so many make the wrong choice, but I've seen a few like you make the right choice and allow the worst of situations to be a platform to turn you towards God. And so with that, I would just be curious, maybe to finish out your story with this. What would you want to tell somebody that is in a similar place? If somebody could have come into your cell and just told you what you needed and wished you would have heard, what would that be? And what would you say to somebody right now? I mean, you're looking back at it all. You're watching God take your life and put the pieces together, and you're on the other side of the storm. But what would you tell to somebody that's in the storm right now in that place of decision?
I mean, I would just tell them to, I know that you're hurting. I know that you feel helpless. I know that you feel hopeless, and that you are at this crossroads where you can make the decision to go one way or the other. And I can tell you, as coming through it, on the other side, I'm not telling you that every day is easy and that you're not going to have days that are hard and that you're going to slip up and make a mistake. But no matter what, that God's not disappointed in you, that God wants you. He loves you, and he's trying to get a hold of you in whatever way he can. He's going to be there for you. And if you just surrender it, the peace that you'll feel, it is like the scripture says, it's beyond all understanding. You won't, it supersedes anything that you can feel. You could be sitting there in a situation that still from the outside looking in looks completely hopeless. You could be homeless. You could be in a relationship with somebody that's beating on you every day and you don't see any possible way out. But if you surrender that over and you just pray for that, I promise you that peace that you feel, it is intoxicating in its own way, and it will give you the strength and the courage you need to go forward and do what you need to do. And I personally would be there for anybody that that wanted help and wanted to talk to somebody. And I know plenty of other people that if I can't be there, that I could get them in contact with them to help them too.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Taylor, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Incredible.
Well, God bless you. Thanks for sharing your story with us.
Yeah. You're welcome. If you or someone you know is in a situation like the situation that I was in, or a similar situation, just know that there are people that can help. The Well Worship Center is a great resource that you can reach out to. Your calls will be completely confidential, and they'll try to get you the resources and anything that we can do to help. I know it might be scary and you might feel hopeless and that there's nobody out there that can help you. Maybe you've tried to get help many times and you've never had the help that you can, but we're going to be here for you. We're praying for you, and God can do miracles.